Imagine you text stop to a brand, and then like 3 hours later, your phone buzzes with another promo from them.
The worst.
Right. Your first thought is just that their customer service is terrible. But you'd be wrong. That text isn't just a bad customer service moment. It is a fundamental architectural failure.
Exactly.
Or think about, the last time you were on a support call, and for the third time in 10 minutes, you had to repeat highly sensitive account information to a brand new agent who clearly had no idea what you just discussed with the previous rep.
Right. They're just flying blind.
Yeah, and we usually chalk these moments up to like operational hiccups or clumsy software, but the truth is much more severe. They are catastrophic trust failures.
And the fallout from those failures is no longer just a frustrated sigh from the consumer. I mean, in a highly regulated, digitally native environment, those disconnects actively erode a company's bottom line. And, they trigger massive regulatory risk.
Which brings us to the mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a stack of source material that outlines a massive paradigm shift happening right now in the business world, specifically within contact centers and customer engagement.
It's a huge shift.
It really is. So whether you are leading a team, designing customer experiences, or if you're just fascinated by how modern businesses build or completely break trust, you really need to understand this shift.
Absolutely.
Because the thesis here is that compliance is no longer just a defensive function meant to avoid fines. It has actually become a powerful strategic differentiator that engineers customer trust and actively drives business growth.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for decades, the old model treated compliance as a checkpoint at the very end of a process, right?
Right, like an afterthought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You build the marketing campaign or the outreach sequence, and then some poor legal team looks it over at the last minute to make sure you didn't break any TCPA or privacy rules. But this new model treats compliance as the actual operating system. Yeah. And to understand how compliance became the operating system, we really have to look at how the nature of compliance itself has fundamentally mutated over the last few years.
Mutated how?
Well, historically, compliance was a very static concept. It meant dusty policy documents sitting on a shelf, annual corporate training, maybe static lists of rules.
A classic compliance binder.
Exactly. But customer communication is incredibly dynamic now. A customer's consent status can change in milliseconds.
Right.
They might reply to an SMS, update your preferences in a web portal, or verbally tell an agent to opt them out all within the same afternoon. A static policy binder just cannot process that.
No, of course not.
Compliance has to live in real-time systems that reflect those API calls and database updates instantly.
Because if that customer opts out via the web portal at 10 a.m., and the architecture is relying on some delayed data sync, your predictive dialer is still going to call them at 2 p.m.
Right. The underlying technology hasn't caught up with the legal reality of the opt-out.
That makes total sense.
And that delay exposes the business far beyond just legal risk, which is really another major aspect of this mutation. We used to view compliance purely through the lens of how do we avoid getting sued by regulators?
Just playing defense.
Exactly. But now, poor compliance architecture acts as a massive drag on the entire revenue engine. I mean, if your consent data is messy, you run into carrier filtering. Your stir-shaking caller reputation drops.
Oh, wow. So your messages literally just don't go through.
Yeah, your message deliverability tanks, and then your agents spend half their time dealing with angry people who shouldn't have been contacted in the first place. It hits the top-line revenue before a regulator ever even gets involved.
So it's a cross-functional problem then?
100%.
Yeah.
It touches IT, CX, revenue operations, the executive team. It's a shared operating capability now.
Wait, hold on. If compliance is suddenly everyone's responsibility, from the IT guy writing the API integration to the marketing team designing the campaign to the revenue leaders, doesn't that usually mean it becomes no one's responsibility?
Well,
I mean, it sounds like a recipe for chaos. If everyone is in charge of compliance, no one is actually checking the boxes.
Yeah, that is the exact trap many organizations fall into when they try to adapt using legacy thinking.
Okay.
If cross-functional compliance just means a longer chain of emails and hoping everyone remembers the rules, yes, it's absolute chaos.
Right, people forget things constantly.
Exactly. So the only resolution to that chaos is building the compliance directly into the software workflows. You don't ask the marketing team to remember the TCPA regulations.
You just hard code it.
Yes. You design the architecture so the system physically will not execute the API call to send the campaign if the real-time consent database says no. Compliance is enforced by the code, not by human memory.
So the system handles the box checking automatically behind the scenes.
Right.
And When you design a system that way, compliance actually becomes part of the customer promise. I mean, when an organization gets this right, when they instantly honor your preferences, securely mask your payment data, and know your journey history without making you repeat it, they're sending a very powerful, silent message.
They absolutely are.
They're basically saying, we respect your time and we respect your data. And in a crowded digital market, that level of frictionless respect is a massive differentiator.
It really is. It's the difference between a brand that feels invasive and a brand that feels anticipatory. But building that anticipatory experience requires an incredibly tight tech stack.
Which brings us to the reality of the situation. Good intentions simply don't matter if the technical foundation is cracked. It's like having a Michelin star recipe for a dish, but your ingredients are locked in 6 different kitchens across town.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. The policy, the recipe is fantastic, but executing it is physically impossible.
Yeah, and in the contact center world, those locked kitchens represent the reality of distributed enterprise architecture. The source material outlines how contact centers routinely fail, not because of malicious intent, but because of foundational architecture failures that just completely cripple their ability to execute that Michelin star recipe.
Right. It's not that they want to spam you.
Exactly. It usually starts with the data itself. Imagine your customers' consent preferences are scattered across a fragmented ecosystem. You have opt-in records living in a marketing automation platform.
Okay.
And then dispute flags sitting in a legacy billing software.
Oh, boy.
And then granular channel preferences buried in an agent's CRM notes. There is no central real-time source of truth.
I'm assuming this leads right to the classic overnight sync problem. I mean, we have all these distributed databases, and they don't natively talk to each other in real time, so we rely on a batch process at 2 a.m. to update everything.
Which is a catastrophic vulnerability.
Yeah, I bet.
You cannot operate a real-time digital engagement strategy on yesterday's data cache. When you rely on batch-based compliance, you instantly create inconsistent suppression logic.
Suppression logic meaning what exactly?
Suppression is the critical function of knowing when not to engage a customer.
Got it.
So if a customer clicks a payment link to resolve a debt, that suppression rule needs to propagate across the entire architecture within milliseconds.
Right, so you don't keep bothering them.
Exactly. If that payment clears at 2 p.m., but the suppression logic is waiting for that 2 a.m. batch job you mentioned, the automated dialer is going to aggressively call that customer at 4 p.m. to collect a debt they already paid.
That is incredibly frustrating for the customer.
And to make matters worse, those outbound engines are usually living in their own channel silos, too.
Oh, so they don't talk to each other either.
Right. The voice dialer is operating on one server, the SMS gateway is completely separate, and the email marketing engine is over in its own walled garden.
So even if the SMS system registers a hard SDOP from a customer, the predictive voice dialer is completely blind to it.
Exactly. They're entirely disconnected kitchens. And who usually ends up paying the price for that disconnected architecture?
Oh, the customer.
Well, yes, but internally, it's the human agents.
Oh, right.
We force contact center agents to act as the manual integration layer for the enterprise. We put them in front of 5 different screens, make them alt-tab between the CRM, the billing system, and the dialer, and expect them to cross-reference disjointed notes to determine if it's legally safe to take an action.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It induces massive cognitive load, it's incredibly unfair to the agent, and frankly, it introduces terrifying operational risk.
Not to mention, if regulators come knocking, you have no way to prove why an action was taken. If your records are that scattered and your agents are manually bridging the gaps in their heads, you suffer from incredibly weak auditability.
Yes, exactly.
You can't cryptographically prove the exact state of the consent database at the millisecond a specific text message was triggered.
What's fascinating here is the cascading chain reaction. When your architecture fragments your data, silos your channels, and delays your updates, compliance inevitably degrades into a manual process.
And humans make mistakes.
Right. The moment compliance becomes a manual process, the moment an agent has to mentally check 6 different systems before clicking dial, your operational risk skyrockets.
Yeah, going back to the analogy, you're forcing a line cook to run across town to manually unlock a fridge before they can chop an onion. It's too slow, and someone is eventually going to grab the wrong ingredient.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So if fragmented architecture is the root cause of these trust failures, the solution has to be moving away from these clunky, delayed reviews to a system that responds and orchestrates in the moment.
Right. And the industry solves this by implementing what we call decisioning layers.
Decisioning layers, okay.
Yeah, decisioning layer acts as this central orchestration engine. It sits between the user interface and the actual communication gateways.
Explain the mechanics of that. How does a decisioning layer actually function in the wild?
Well, think of it as the ultimate expediter in your Michelin star kitchen.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Before a single plate leaves the kitchen, or in this case, before a single automated text or outbound call hits the telecom carrier, the decisioning layer intercepts the request
Instantly.
in a matter of milliseconds. It queries the central database. Does this customer meet the current eligibility criteria? Do we have explicit time-stamped channel permission?
Right.
Is there an active dispute or a recent payment that triggers a suppression rule? It evaluates the risk, applies the enterprise logic, and either approves, routes, or kills the action before it happens.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because when you describe an orchestration engine evaluating complex rules and making routing decisions in milliseconds, it sounds like we are handing the keys entirely over to the machines.
I can see why it sounds like that.
Are we removing human judgment from customer engagement? Is this just an AI free-for-all running on autopilot?
Not at all. In fact, removing the human is the exact opposite of what high-performing compliance architectures do.
Okay, good to know.
The source text highlights a methodology called human sequence selection technology.
Human sequence selection.
Yeah. The platform Customer Dynamics uses, called Safe Select, is a prime example of this. The goal isn't to let algorithms blindly blast out communications.
Right.
The goal of the decisioning layer, the expediter, is to gather all the data, ensure all the compliance checks are perfect, and present a fully safe, contextualized sequence to a human agent.
Ah, so the agent still pulls the trigger.
Exactly. Automation handles the massive scale, the millisecond API queries, and the strict compliance guardrails. But the human agent reviews the sequence, understands the nuance of the customer's journey, and makes the final accountable decision to initiate the outreach.
I see. So the expediter preps the tray perfectly, checks it against the recipe, and then hands it to the chef to say, everything here is compliant and ready. Do you want to serve this?
Exactly. The system scales the safety, but the human retains the context.
And when you engineer your architecture to function that way, trust ceases to be this abstract, fuzzy concept, doesn't it? Trust becomes a highly measurable engineered business metric.
Yes, exactly.
I really want to dig into that, actually, because measuring trust sounds like, corporate speak. How do you quantify something as subjective as consumer trust?
Well, you quantify it through the behavioral exhaust data of your architecture.
Behavioral exhaust data.
Yeah, customers vote on their trust levels with their actions. The sources point to very specific telemetry: opt-out rates, spam and stir-shaken carrier block rates, first contact resolution, and payment completion percentage.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. If your architecture is randomly texting people 3 hours after they opted out, your spam complaints spike. Carriers flag your outbound numbers as scam likely, and your connection rates just plummet.
Yeah.
Those aren't just IT metrics. They are direct mathematical signals of customer confidence.
So if your stir-shaken block rate is climbing, your trust is dropping. It's a direct inverse relationship. Let's ground all this abstract architecture in reality, though. The text gives us a great use case of a financial services organization, which is like the perfect crucible for this, since the regulatory stakes are so incredibly high.
High stakes and historically highly fragmented tech stacks. Let's look at the before picture of this financial organization.
Okay, let's hear it.
They are dealing with everything we just discussed. Consent records are living in 3 different legacy databases.
Naturally.
Suppression updates are handled via a batch script that runs on Friday nights. Agents are completely flying blind, alt-tabbing between a billing screen and a CRM, completely unaware that the customer they are talking to just filed an aggressive compliance complaint via email 10 minutes ago.
Yikes. Meanwhile, the marketing and revenue teams are paralyzed. I mean, they want to launch new targeted campaign, but they have to wait 3 weeks because the legal department has to manually scrub the data lists in Excel to make sure they aren't violating TCPA rules.
Exactly. It's a high-friction environment for everyone. Customers are furious at the disjointed outreach, agents are stressed because they have no context, and executives are sweating the operational risk.
Okay, so that's the before. How does the after look?
Well, contrast that with the after picture when they deploy a unified decisioning framework. Consent APIs are synchronized centrally.
Okay.
If a customer opts out via SMS, the decisioning layer instantly updates the suppression table, And the voice dialer is physically prevented from queuing that number.
Instantly.
Instantly. Agents are given a unified interface that pulls context from every channel instantly. Payment workflows are heavily encrypted and abstracted from the agent's view.
Right.
And because all of these guardrails are hard-coded into the architecture, the marketing team can launch campaigns instantly, knowing the system will filter out any non-compliant records on the fly.
Wow. Bridging that gap from manual Excel scrubbing to millisecond API orchestration requires serious technological heavy lifting, though.
It really does.
And the source material breaks down a specific toolkit from Customer Dynamics that facilitates this transition. Let's look at how these specific tools actually rewire the architecture to fix the failures we discussed, starting with their campaign management solution, Velocity.
Yeah, so Velocity fundamentally restructures how the outbound engine queries data. In a legacy setup, you load a static list of 10,000 numbers into a dialer and just hit go.
The batch and blast approach.
Exactly. Velocity replaces that batch and blast approach with real-time API-driven coordination. It queries the central decisioning layer dynamically, ensuring that high-volume outbound prioritization is constantly checking against real-time suppression and eligibility rules before every single dial.
Which eliminates the stale cache problem we talked about.
Exactly.
And then there's Safe Select, which tackles the channel silos and that need for human oversight we discussed earlier.
Yes, Safe Select bridges those silos to create compliant-capable omni-channel outbound. It provides the UI for that human sequence selection we discussed. So instead of the SMS gateway and the voice dialer operating blindly, Safe Select orchestrates them. It presents the unified, pre-checked options to the agent, so every piece of outreach is coordinated, purposeful, and human-approved.
But to make that human approval work, you have to solve the cognitive load on the agent, right? We can't keep making them the integration layer.
Right. And that is the exact problem E2DX solves.
E2DX, got it.
E2DX is an abstraction layer for the agent desktop. Instead of forcing the agent to alt-tab between 5 clunky legacy systems, E2DX uses back-end APIs to pull all the relevant CRM data, dirty context, and compliance flags into one single unified screen pop.
Oh, that's huge.
It really is. It gives the agent the exact narrative of the customer without exposing them to the back-end database complexity.
And in the financial sector, the ultimate test of that architecture is how it handles the transaction.
Which is handled by C3 Payment.
Okay.
This tool fundamentally alters the payment workflow to remove risk. It uses DTMF masking and tokenization to allow for agent-guided or agentless payments.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning the sensitive credit card or ACH data never hits the agent's screen or the local network. It completely isolates the PCI compliance risk while keeping the customer experience totally seamless.
So E2DX abstracts the backend for the agent, C3 Payment tokenizes and secures the transaction, Velocity coordinates the high-volume API routing, and Safe Select ensures the actual outreach sequence is human-approved.
You got it.
And all of this is housed within their overarching cloud infrastructure.
Correct. Customer Dynamics, CKI, their cloud contact center model, acts as the foundational operating environment. It connects the outbound engagement, inbound service, the decisioning layers, and the secure payment gateways into one tightly coupled, centrally orchestrated model.
Okay, so what does this all mean? I mean, when you step back and look at how this toolkit rewires the enterprise, it fundamentally flips the script on what compliance actually is.
It really does.
Compliance isn't a legal bottleneck designed to slow you down. It is an architectural growth enabler.
Yeah.
When your revenue teams and your agents actually trust the system to catch the errors, enforce the API rules, and handle the suppression automatically, they don't have to tiptoe around manually checking spreadsheets.
They can sprint.
Yes. You can scale your outreach, deploy campaigns faster, and drive significantly more revenue without scaling your operational risk.
It's a total paradigm shift. To synthesize everything we've analyzed today, trust is an engineered outcome.
Yep.
The organizations that dominate the future of customer engagement are going to stop asking the legacy question, who do we contact today?
Right.
The new model, driven by real-time decisioning architecture, asks a much more sophisticated question. It asks, based on the real-time data, what is the most compliant, contextually relevant thing that should happen next for this specific customer?
It shifts the entire operation from being reactive to being deeply anticipatory.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, compliance isn't the brakes slowing the business down. It is the high-performance engineering, the advanced suspension, the aerodynamic downforce, the precision steering that allows the business vehicle to go incredibly fast, safely.
I love that.
If you try to drive at scale without that engineering, you crash.
Yeah.
With it, you dominate the track.
The brakes aren't there to restrict you. They're there to give you the control to drive faster.
Exactly.
And that brings up a really provocative thought to leave you, our listener, with today. We've spent this time exploring how seamless real-time compliance architectures are quietly shaping the very best customer journeys behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But as consumers become increasingly hyper-aware of their data privacy and digital footprints, could we soon see a future where consumers actively shop for businesses based on the public transparency of their compliance architecture?
It's a highly plausible evolution of consumer behavior, honestly.
Think about it. Will being trust engineered or compliance certified become the new organic or fair trade label for digital services? Will we reach a tipping point where consumers demand to see the blueprints of your data architecture, demanding proof of your real-time decisioning layers before they even consider handing over their phone number?
It's a really interesting question.
Because I'll tell you what, the next time I get a promotional text 3 hours after I specifically opted out, I'm not just going to roll my eyes at bad customer service.
No.
I'm going to know exactly which database sync failed. And I'm taking my business to the company that bothered to engineer my trust.
It's moving from a back-office necessity to a front-page value proposition.
It really is the ultimate competitive advantage. Food for thought as you evaluate your own tech stacks, or just the next time your phone buzzes with an update. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.